Officially call the Economic Development and Housing Committee Community Land Trust public hearing to order. I am Councilmember Shayla Favor, Chair of the Economic Development and Housing Committee. None of my council members are present, so we will go ahead and skip that. But thank you all for joining us on a wonderful, warm, sunny day in Columbus, Ohio. I appreciate you being here to engage in this conversation with us. I would like to introduce our speakers. We have Director Steve Shoney, who oversees the Department of Development. We have John Turner, who's the administrator of the Land Redevelopment Division and the City of Columbus Land Bank. And then we also have Hope Kingsborough, Vice President of Programs and Housing with the Central Ohio Community Improvement Corporation, also known as COSIC. Thank you all for being here and for providing your knowledge and expertise as it relates to this conversation. The intention of this public hearing is to review the Central Ohio Community Land Trust pilot proposal and to provide information regarding the trust. Since the start of the city's vacant and abandoned properties initiative, the City of Columbus Land Bank Program and the County Land Bank Program, also known as COSIC, has worked very close together in partnership to identify and target vacant and abandoned properties and to remove blight in the City of Columbus. On February 1st, 2019, COSIC announced the creation of the Central Ohio Community Land Trust. COSIC is supported by the County Treasurer's Office and the Franklin County Commissioners, serves as the Franklin County Land Bank, and will also oversee the trust as its subsidiary. The partnership has resulted in the accumulation of multiple parcels in the neighborhoods ready for redevelopment. COSIC, the city, and Franklin County now have created a community land trust, or CLT, that will probably be used today, to utilize these parcels to increase the supply of affordable housing. The community land trust will acquire land and build homes for working families in 4 Central Ohio neighborhoods. I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Director Shoney to explain the proposal in further detail.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. First of all, let me begin by thanking our partners at the county. Treasurer Brooke Sullivan is the chair of the COSIC board. All the commissioners support or appoint members to the board. I sit on that board with those members, and it is a fantastic partnership that would not be possible without our elected officials at the county. This program is an extension of a partnership that has been really growing and maturing for, I don't know, 7 years or so. A couple years ago, we decided to actually co-locate the land banks. So our city land bank staff lease space for a very reasonable rate from our friends at COSIC in the old Parsons Library on Parsons Avenue. We work closely every day on bringing properties in the city of Columbus back to productive use. As we saw the market changing in Columbus from just being in a place where we were trying to get properties back into productive use as quickly as we could, and seeing pressures for affordability, concerns about gentrification, concerns about making sure that we would be able to maintain our mixed income neighborhoods, we started looking very hard at this concept of a community land trust. And through the hard work of John Turner and Hope and Curtis Williams, as well as a veritable army of community stakeholders that have helped us move forward through various advisory groups and just well-intentioned advice and counsel, we've come to the point now where we're ready to move forward with setting up the land trust and start some pretty exciting pilot projects. So I'm going to stop talking and let those who can say a lot more about the specifics of what we're doing move forward. And if it's okay with you, turn the microphone over to John.
Absolutely. Mr. Turner.
Okay, good evening, Councilmember Favor. I'm here with Hope. I represent the city's land bank program, and she represents the county's land bank program. We have something what we term the unified land banks. This is a very unique arrangement where the city has a land bank and the county has a land bank. We're co-located in a building and we work on everything together. And over the last several years, as you well know, our focus has been on the acquisition, the resale, and the demolition of vacant and abandoned properties. And I'll put a little, over that time, we have acquired over 2,000 structures and vacant parcels in that time. And that has left us with a big inventory of vacant lots. Right now, we have currently in the city of Columbus 1,500 lots, vacant lots, ready for redevelopment. And in Franklin County overall, we have 1,700. So 1,500 in the city and another 200 in county areas. What we've seen when we sell land bank properties is that structures have been selling very well. Since 2012, we've sold 800 structures, previously abandoned structures, to individuals who commit to a renovation of that structure. And what we see is that a lot of those projects command a very high price. For example, we have several houses over the last couple years that have sold well over $350,000 in areas like the Near East, around $250 to $300 in areas like the South Side and Franklinton. So we have been working really to implement a big goal of the mayor, which is to create mixed income neighborhoods. We've also looked at this community land trust as a model because of one of the work that City Council has done on the subject and really is in your leadership on looking at this concept and how it could apply to Columbus. So about a year ago, or actually more like 8 months ago, we developed a community land trust advisory group that consists of people that work in the affordable housing industry, bankers, city and county officials, and try to come up with a plan and study this issue to see if we can make it apply to Columbus. We also hired a consultant out of Cleveland who runs a land trust there. We thought it was important to not only have a good consultant to help guide us in structuring this entity, but also someone who's based in Ohio, because it's very important that all of our legal documents, meet Ohio law, and that would be the quickest way to get this up and running. We chose COSIC to be the trust to be a subsidiary of the Central Ohio Community Improvement Corporation, the county land bank. They are an entity that has a steady stream of resources. They have a county-wide footprint. And between us, we have so many lots. And I think we're in a unique position to implement this in this inventory that we already have. I'll turn it over to Hope to go through what a community land trust is and kind of the features of it.
Thank you. It's nice to be here today. Council Member Favor. First of all, COSIC is excited to be part of this initiative and have as its subsidiary the Central Ohio Community Land Trust. This is a partnership we consider it to be with the city and with Franklin County. We would also like to thank you for considering this allocation of funds to the trust at this time. And so the trust can be very simple in the premise of what it is, and so that's what we thought might be helpful today in this discussion. Basically, it's a nonprofit that is community-based and is designed to ensure long-term affordability, housing affordability. The trust maintains the land and the ownership permanently, and we work with prospective homeowners to enter into a land lease instead of a traditional sale. When the home buyer sells the home, the resale formula that is described in the land lease allows for the home buyer to take their down payment, their equity that they put into the mortgage, and also a shared part of the appraisal price of the value of the home at the time of sale. A land lease allows for an affordability not only for the first home buyer, but for every home buyer afterwards, with the trust permanently holding the land. And so also with the second model to the second homeowner, it also allows for the subsidy to not have to occur again. There will be subsidy with the first home buyer, but with the second home buyer, there would be no further subsidy needed to make it an affordable unit. So that in itself is the gist of homeownership as far as it's concerned with a land trust. It's a different model, but there's currently over 200 land trusts throughout the country. In fact, I believe the Otis Land Trust is going to celebrate its 50-year anniversary this year. So the concept is not new, but obviously new to Ohio, and the fact that there's only 2 additional trusts at this time in Ohio. So we're excited to be what we feel is part of a new initiative for the state and for Central Ohio.
Thank you. I think we have noted that there were some areas that were going to be specific to where a development would occur with the trust. Could someone speak to those areas?
Well, I can go into more detail on the ordinance. So before you is ordinance 0227-2019. It's to request $3.8 million for a pilot program to establish the community land trust and to fund some initial projects with it. What's interesting about the funds is that these are funds that are currently held and carried over from prior year's budgets with the land bank that were initially allocated for demolition under the VAT program. So it's nice to use these funds to redevelop properties where we had once demolished a blighted structure. So we are in discussions right now with a couple or few nonprofit developers who will start construction on these houses. Our goal with this $3.8 million is to develop up to 40 housing units. Our game plan is to have the nonprofit developer bring the money to develop the property and have the subsidy that the city's providing to make that property affordable to someone under this trust umbrella. Once we have those agreements entered into, we'll have more specificity on who our development partners are and more detail on that. But we'd like to start in areas that really meet 2 criteria. One, that land banks have an existing pool of vacant lots. I mean, that's really a crucial thing, and it's one of the big advantages of running the trust through land banks is that we don't have to go out on the market and start acquiring and buying properties. So that's pretty vital. The second thing is that we want to target areas that we see an existing increase in property values or anticipate increased property values in the near future based on other things that are going on in that neighborhood, other development projects. So right now, at least for the initial pilot program, we're looking at Near East, Wineland Park, Franklinton, and the South Side. What we'd like to do is grow it from there once we've established the trust into other neighborhoods and see ways that we can bring this model not only to the areas that you have really high appraisal values, but all other struggling neighborhoods where the values haven't jumped that as high. So that's our goal. And as we go forward, our next steps, and once this ordinance is passed, not only working out the final agreements on the construction of the houses, we'll also be doing additional outreach to the community and other partners, and look for dates for that. That will include outreach to community groups and potential home buyers under the Community Land Trust. We are developing a unique home buyer curriculum that is geared toward the Community Land Trust and also outreach to the realtor community.
So if we're talking about home ownership, not renting or leasing, is there going to be an educational component where individuals who are interested in purchasing their first-time home may need to do some credit repair or just learn how to navigate the world of home ownership? Will there be some component there for those individuals?
The current plan is for the trust to partner with established nonprofit housing home buyer educational agencies that are already here, very well established, already working with clients who wish to buy a home in these areas. We look to have the same eligibility requirement as far as them doing the 8-hour traditional HUD certified counseling curriculum. We still believe that's very important for any home buyer. But what we also will probably add to it is an additional course on land trust homes. This is a different type of buying situation, and we want to make sure that each one of the potential home buyers really understands the 99-year land lease type format, the shared equity model. And so we believe not only for the 8-hour traditional education, but a few more courses, just another time of course work to make sure that they really understand this model.
Mr. Turner, could you speak to the audience about why an individual or a family would want to go this route? If they're looking for an affordable house, why would they enter into this type of project versus going a different way?
Yeah, I think first of all, we know that we have to deliver a product that people want to buy because they have to enter into this agreement that's going to cap the amount of appreciation that they can take with them when they sell the house. There's really a balancing act here. On one hand, you want people to earn equity and appreciation on their property so they can build wealth. But also you want the property values to keep pace with wages and to ensure that housing continues to be affordable. And the land trust tries to balance those things by splitting the growth or the increase of that value of that house. Also, we are talking about price points where in certain neighborhoods where you're just not going to be able to find a house anymore. For example, in the Near East, we've sold several lots to developers who have built new houses. We have one listed right now that is on the market for $495,000. A lot of these houses, and really it's also driven by the price of construction. We see a lot of applications for single-family houses, and it is hard. You're hard pressed to be able to even develop a house less than $225,000 or even $250,000. Considering it's an urban lot, you need new utilities and a lot of things that go into building an urban environment that you don't have in the rural or suburban areas. So we'd be delivering something that a lot of home buyers just can't afford or just isn't on the market right now.
And is there a time frame, a certain amount of years that a homeowner would need to stay in the property before engaging in a sale?
The way the current model would be is no, they would not be penalized for not staying in a home for a certain amount of time.
All right. We can move on to the public testimony. I believe we have six speakers. Just as a reminder, every speaker is granted 3 minutes. There will be a clock that will pop up. There is a soft ding that is very respectable, but if you need to finish your sentence, please feel free to do so. So we will call you up in the order in which we received them. Minister Ashe, if you will join us at the podium.
God to Councilwoman Shayla Favors. We're glad to have you. You've stepped right in and taken Jiza's place and done quite well. We're proud of you. I live at 1119 East 16th Avenue, Columbus, Ohio, in South Linden. I am here in support of the Community Land Trust pilot proposal that is set before you today. For several years, we've tried to get this done. We've had meetings with Mr. Curtis Williams and Mr. John Turner, Treasurer Sherbrooke Sullivan, at the office on Parsons Avenue several years ago. Last year, we've been involved in the whole process. We've really wanted this to happen. Although I'm a member of the Baptist Ministerial Alliance, I'm a member of the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, I'm a member of the Concerned Lending Clergy. I'm not representing them per se here at this point in time. I'm representing thousands of homeowners, seniors mostly, who have homes in all of these areas. And we want this land trust. We couldn't build it on our own, so we kept pushing for the county and the city to do this, and they have brought this to you, and I hope that it passes. That's number one. Number two, if it does pass, which we hope it does, we need some help. We've met with Councilman Cinziano on the roundtable, housing roundtables, and all across the city. And the problem that we have is that when the developers come and build these houses, just like Mr. Moody Nolan's building a house on McClellan now, you know, which is great. But when you build these houses, the taxes go up for all the other people who live there. And a lot of us on fixed income, we can't afford more taxes. Then also, the developers take monies from the OPRs and other kind of funds where they get the monies from. A lot of times this retirement money builds up the communities, but it also forces the same people that they got the retirement monies from out of their homes. And this is the problem that we're having. So we need a pool of money, a pot of money that we can go into to get our mortgages paid off, our second mortgages, our liens on our homes due to all this new development that's coming. So that's what we want. Of course, we need the community trust done first, but then I'm here trying to stay ahead of the game, being proactive and saying, look, we need a pot of money. Maybe the developers can put in, tithing, I'm a minister, 10%, maybe 5%, I don't know. 10% would be great. They could put into a pool of money so that the people in the low-income folks and people on set income could get these funds to pay off their liens and their mortgages and second mortgages on their homes so we could stay in our communities. And those are the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that I represent standing here in front of you today. And that really is going to be a problem, a major problem in the years to come, because we're going to be forced out of our own homes with our own money. And I don't think that's right. As founder of the economic rights movement, that's one of the things I think we have a right to. We have a right to economic security to stay in our own homes. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any commentary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick point. Because of the way that the value of a land trust home is structured, we don't believe that these homes will actually have nearly as much impact on surrounding property owners' home values, because as John and Hope explained, basically you're capping the resale price, which means you're capping the valuation, which when the county auditor goes out and looks at comparables when they're doing their reassessments, that should have no or minimal to no impact on surrounding property owners' taxes.
Thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge my colleague, Councilmember Priscilla Tyson, as well for joining us. All right, our next speaker was Ms. Kim Barrett. Good afternoon. Mm-hmm.
I wasn't.
Oh, you're fine.
Kim Barrett, Old Town East. And I'm also a realtor, and I've been a realtor for 25 years, and I specialize in downtown and the necklace neighborhoods. So I've been a part of everything that you're talking about, and I have a different perspective that I'd like to offer up. As I am speaking with other realtors in the neighborhood, as this program has started to unwind, many developers are already pulled out. I mean, a lot. And these were all private deals. Actually, a couple of them were land bank. And I find this troubling. I've lived on Brighton Road for almost 30 years. I've worked on my house for 30 years. I maintain it. I pull the certificates of appropriateness. I pull my permits. We still don't have our services in Old Town. We still don't have, I mean, yeah, everything's supposed to be coming, but sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And I'm very concerned as I was running the different properties that are now owned by the collective, because there's like, what, 6 different groups that are in partnership with the city on this? Next Gen, CMHA, which I'm I'm dismayed about CMHA being connected to this land trust, since they are and have been listed as one of the top 10 worst landlords in the city. I'm also concerned that the people that will be getting into these properties won't actually get the equity that they deserve as a full homeowner. And I don't understand, I mean, how are the lenders addressing this? I do know how the appraisers feel about it because I've had many conversations with them. And they are telling me that it will impact the values of the surrounding homes. It can't help but do so. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot, and I, as a woman that's sliding straight into Old Ladyville, I'm concerned about my taxes too, because I've made a lot of improvements on my home. I know my taxes are going up. And, I mean, there are alternatives to what's, to this particular project. I mean, we could do a blight tax like they do in Savannah, so that when you leave properties undeveloped and sitting there, you get money from the people that do it. I mean, it's a very active program in Savannah. Also, there could be a deferred on seniors and some of these, or for taxes on seniors. I'd vote for that in a big way. And I want to keep my neighbors. I don't want to see any of my neighbors. I mean, for the love of God, I've lived there for 30 years. I love it. I love everybody I live around. And I think that there's a lot of different ways that we need to look at this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Turner, if there were a couple things that were brought up, if we could speak specifically to who are the partners that are involved in this project.
So the partners are not CMHA or NextGen. They include some of our traditional single-family affordable housing developers, and also another entity that is from out of state. But we'll have more information on that once we are ready for those announcements.
So no NextGen and no CMHA involved
Correct.
in this
Yeah,
trust. If you could also address the matter of, or the concern of a homeowner not being able to take that equity with them.
Well, that's kind of the, as I was saying before, that's kind of the trade-off that you get for affordability. We've seen in some of our affordable housing projects in the past, a typical city affordable housing project will, use home or capital funds to essentially do the same thing, buy down either the gap between what it takes to build a house and what it appraised for, or what the buyer can afford. And that's placed upon the house as a forgivable mortgage or a deed restriction. But with a mortgage or a deed restriction, there are terms to that. And if they either pay off the restriction or the mortgage, or just wait out the term, then they're free to sell it for whatever amount that they deem that the market will bear. And at that point is when you lose houses that were affordable that are no longer affordable or will not become affordable in the future. The second thing I like to try to comment about is how this may affect appraisal values. One of the things about the trust properties, and Director Shoney was alluding to this. This is not a typical transaction of property. This is not a typical transfer. It is a ground lease that ties the lot to the house and the buyer. So you're not selling the underlying lot. That means that there's no transfer of the property in the traditional sense. And so the appraisal is not an arm's length appraisal. It would include, looking at the provisions of the underlying ground lease, and would only include the structure improvements to the property. This is a community land trusts are actually a fairly common thing in East Coast cities and West Coast cities, and in communities that have high dollar value real estate. So we're hoping that we can get in where it's still affordable to have a house in Columbus and keep it affordable over time.
And Ms. Barrett also mentioned the concern about lenders and potentially some apprehension there.
Sure. So on our advisory committee, we have three lenders that are working with us. One of the lenders, Huntington, originates trust loans both in Yellow Springs and Cleveland right now, and in other cities. The trust loan, there is a product for trust loans that are sellable or that are underwritten by Fannie Mae. So they're conventional sellable mortgages. And we are working with a partner that is a very big partner with large banks and will really engage those lenders and to come up with a product specifically for Columbus.
Specific to Columbus and specific to dealing with trusts.
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, there was a notation about losing neighbors. And so I think it's important that we continue to reiterate that there is no displacement of individuals from their homes. These are vacant lots that property will be built on.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Oh, boy. Our next speaker is Ms. Colleen, and I will not mispronounce your name. How do I pronounce it? No, ma'am, I wasn't going to get that.
Nobody does.
Thank you.
But it's easy once you know the secret. I'd like to say that, number one, I want more information. 20 minutes, I don't really feel like I really understand the program. I am much clearer now than when I came in the door. It's a big program, and it's laudable to be working on this problem. I love what the land bank has done. I have a land bank property. And I understand the concerns about people being forced out. Sorry, people being forced out. Kim Barrett had sort of mentioned it. You know, we've talked about it in the neighborhood. I, too, am on the Near East Side. And with these rising property values, it is a concern with the tax bill. But with these rising property values, it means when these owners sell, right, there's a payoff in the end. And I don't understand why somebody hasn't looked at a deferred program. Give these folks who don't have the means for these additional taxes a plan to defer those taxes so that they're paid off when they sell the property and they've got this, we're talking in some cases Near East Side, as you've mentioned, right? Hundreds, like $100,000 minimum is not out of the question. Would you agree? Yeah, absolutely. Take a look at that. I think that more information is needed. I think that somebody representing the land trust has got to go to the Near East Side neighborhood, to the neighborhoods where you're going to implement this, and get much more granular on the details. I appreciate the explanation of how it won't impact property values, right? But I share with Kim Barrett the home ownership. You know, part of what goes with home ownership is appreciation. People have short memories. It's 2019. In 10 years, people are going to be asking the question, why is my property not increasing like my neighbor's property? They'll forget about 2019 and how, this came about. And then the last thing that I wondered about, just kind of common sense. If I buy a property and I know it's only going to sell for X, I already know that, right? I signed the land deed. Why would I maintain it? Why would I put money in my house, right? So I don't want another situation where you're creating more blight. So what are you, as the land trust, going to do about making people maintain their homes?
Thank you. Wonderful comments there. Anyone like to speak to that?
If I can start, just one point of clarification, and we hear loud and clear the concern about rising property values and the impact that that has on current residents' taxes. There's a fundamental issue at play, though, which is the city has no ability to directly impact that. For existing property owners who are not making new investments in their properties, that investment then increases the value of their property. That is entirely driven by state legislation and by the county auditors' auditing practices. Both our outgoing auditor and our incoming auditor are very aware of this issue. I think if the seat between the two council members who are here right now was filled, I think the incoming auditor would be able to speak to this. But it is something we've talked with Councilmember Stinziano, Auditor-elect Stinziano, about the challenge. He's heard it loud and clear. But it really, honestly, requires some level of action at the State House. And we will continue to advocate for that. We will be partners, but at the end of the day, those laws are set at the State House. John, I don't know if you wanted to, the one other thing I would say is to put some kind of rough numbers to what John was talking about the shared equity model, and to the last speaker's questions about, 10 years down the road, are people going to remember this? Basically what this amounts to is the home buyer in a land bank transaction will get a $240,000 to $300,000 house for, let's say, $160,000 to $180,000. That is the trade-off. So the limit on the equity that you're getting is in return for getting a better house than you could get with the money that you put in, and that is the exchange that's happening. In terms of the shared, and that's the shared equity. That's making sure that the trust gets some of that equity for having put that money in up front, and making sure that we have a fair share of the equity growth that's in that property. And I don't know if John or Hope wants to address the maintenance and those issues, because I think that's a fair question.
First, as far as community outreach, we definitely do want to make a schedule, and it'll be available soon, of time commitments that we will make to outreach to the communities, especially the ones where we're starting to make this plan in their neighborhoods. And so we know that's really important, and we will come prepared to explain things in further detail, which is an honest point that it is something we will need to dig into the weeds when we have more of a one-on-one opportunity with residents in those areas. And so we very much plan to do that. Also, as far as an incentive to take care of their home, the appraisal value that they will share in, that percentage, is not based at the beginning when they purchase the home. It is the appraisal at the time that they want to sell it. So there's no determined price at the beginning in the land lease. So the appraisal takes place at the beginning, but it also takes place when they are going to sell the home. So any improvements that they make can be captured in the resale formula, and also they are going to share in that higher value that we would anticipate it being at the time of sale. So there's great incentive for them to take care of their home as a homeowner, because they will benefit from a higher price point of appraisal if they do so.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Daniel Ruggers. Ruggiero.
Just glad you took a stab at my name and not hers. Daniel Ruggiero with Homes on the Hill. Thank you, Councilperson Favor, and hello, Councilperson Tyson. I'm Daniel Ruggiero, the Assistant Director at Homes on the Hill. We are the Community Development Corporation serving the Greater Hilltop and Westland areas in Columbus. We also are members of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, the National Housing Resource Center, Unidos US, the Ohio CDC Association, and the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio. I'm here today because we're not opposed to the land trust. And in fact, we're looking forward to providing the HUD-approved housing counseling for these buyers. Looking forward to learning more about that so we can properly educate them. But we are concerned that once again, there's a pilot affordable housing program that is once again excluding the west side. We understand it's a pilot, and we understand that we're not facing gentrification in the Hilltop yet. In fact, we're probably many years away from that. But I started at Homes on the Hill in 2002, and even back then, the city United Way funders selected 4 neighborhoods, which was Wyland Park, Franklinton, King Lincoln, Parsons, which are basically the same areas we are here today 17 years later. So we've been talking about what happens in 10 years. Well, 17 years ago, those areas were focused with all sorts of programming, not just affordable housing, but everything has been focused there, and we just feel on the west side that we're once again being forgotten. This program may not work for us since it's a land trust and we may not be ready for it, but we are open to all sorts of other affordable housing programs. We would welcome them. We know the city is working right now on a community plan for the Hilltop. We're very pleased with that. Too bad it didn't happen sooner, but hopefully we'll have some good concrete plans with affordable housing built into that. Some are suggesting multifamily housing might be the solution, but I'd like to point out in the greater Hilltop and Westland, we have plenty of good single-family housing stock that can be renovated for sale or for rental housing. 40% of the homes in the country are actually for rental, single-family homes, so we have plenty of that housing stock on the west side. So I guess in conclusion, we just want you to consider going forward when you're talking about affordable housing investment to keep us in mind out on the west side. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We did touch on this just a little bit in the beginning, just in regards to the 4 areas and why those areas were selected. But I do think it is important. It was my question as well, if we can reiterate why those areas were selected.
So as I mentioned before, there are two fundamental criteria that we placed. One, it's an area that we have a good inventory of developable lots. Hilltop would certainly meet that criteria also. But we also, when you look at the community land trust, the model tends to be implemented in areas where you have higher appraisal values. And so we looked at our inventory and really wanted to select areas where you see that growth in property values or where we anticipate having that growth in property values. Because at the end of the day, we have to deliver something that's a buyer will purchase. And we feel that having a house that is under $200,000 and maybe as low as $150,000, depending on the individual buyer, in a neighborhood where a house is for sale for double that, makes a lot of sense, at least initially. We certainly want to come up with an answer for other neighborhoods, including Linden and Homes and the Hilltop area. And we're also excited about the new planning initiative in the Hilltop and what will come out of that initiative. But we were wanting to come out of and implement this pilot program in the areas in which we would be most likely to sell the houses.
Thank you. Yes.
I would just like to add also that some land trusts are starting to look at rental products. It is not where we're starting out of the gate at, but as we look at people in areas that may not be mortgage ready or may be just a long-term renter, there are opportunities down the road to consider partnerships with like a Homes on the Hill that we could partner with to provide a home in the trust for a rental product. Those are newer and down the road that could be something that we looked at, but it's always an option as we grow.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Joyce Jacobson. Pass? Okay. And our last speaker is Ms. Jennifer Heckert. Ms. Tavares? Thank you for joining us.
Testimony I'll give you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Favor and members of Columbus City Council, Councilwoman Tyson. I'm Charlita Tavares, and I'm the CEO of Primary One Health and former housing chair of this esteemed body. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the patients we serve at 9 community health centers in Columbus, Franklin County, and one of the social determinants of health, housing, that is negatively impacting their health outcomes. Housing, as you are well aware, is a basic need. It stabilizes individuals and families and helps us to address other needs such as food and rest, elimination of stress, and protection from the elements. Primary One Health is a comprehensive healthcare system providing primary and behavioral health care, as well as what's called enabling services such as transportation, interpretation, social work to connect our patients to services and programs to address the social determinants. One of the major issues which negatively affects the health and well-being of our patients is quality, safe, decent, and affordable housing. I'm a former state senator who sounded the alarm in 2013 at the state level to initiate our efforts to address infant deaths generally and our abhorrent disparities among African American babies specifically. My joint sponsor of Senate Bill 332, Senator Shannon Jones, and I worked in developing this nationally recognized comprehensive legislation, which included addressing the housing needs of pregnant women, who may also be homeless, as a strategy to reduce infant deaths. Primary One Health worked with the city and county to ensure that pregnant women were prioritized and served beyond the then 7-day limit in our shelters. I share this as an example of why we need a continuum of housing if we are going to resolve the affordable housing crisis in Columbus, Franklin County, and throughout the state and nation. We cannot look at this in a piecemeal or scattershot way. We have to look at developing and maintaining safe, decent, quality, and affordable housing throughout the continuum, from homeless shelters, multifamily housing, apartments, rentals, and home ownership, and from no income to workforce housing to meet the needs of our community residents. As the former Columbus City Council housing chair, I have a unique perspective, and I'm very proud of some of the work we were able to accomplish with my colleagues during my tenure. We established and funded the senior housing study with the Central Ohio Area Agency on Aging, worked with Barbara Poppy and the Community Shelter Board to establish and implement the Rebuilding Lives Housing Plan, work with the former mayor to create the Affordable Housing Trust of Columbus and Franklin County, and created with Auditor Dorian the Housing Preservation Fund using our bonding authority. One of the ideas I was unable to complete before I left was a community land trust. We initiated meetings with stakeholders and interested parties to identify promising practices and challenges with the Ohio-based community land trust in Yellow Springs and Cleveland, Ohio. However, we were not able to complete our work. I applaud Councilwoman Favor and Columbus City Council for recommending this strategy and working with Franklin County and the Central Ohio Community Improvement Corporation in creating the Central Ohio Community Land Trust. I believe that this is a logical next step in building our housing continuum, especially in neighborhoods where housing prices are rising significantly. I have a couple of additional recommendations that I would like to suggest. First, review the Ohio housing codes with an affordability lens, looking at it through the affordability lens. Bedroom requirements, size, number of bathrooms, etc., which are driving up our housing costs. revisit boarding, shared, and congregate living housing to determine if this is a strategy to address homelessness, housing preferences, isolation of seniors, and those without family, temporary living, etc. Develop tiny home communities or cargo container homes for those who do not want or need larger spaces. Review our housing affordability continuum with other stakeholders like CMHA, Community Housing Network, the Adam H. Board, the DD Board, and others to work on an income scale to move residents along the continuum when their salaries increase to a certain level to open up those lower priced entities or units for those at the bottom or the no income level. Require all developers, and I know you're doing this, who receive any kind of public funding or incentives to set aside a minimum of 20% of their housing units for those below a certain income level. Work with HUD on FHA and VA mortgages and financial institutions on private mortgages that have been foreclosed upon to determine if they can be purchased by the community land trust with first right of refusal or before they are vandalized or left to go in disrepair. And develop a regional mixed income and housing plan with our suburban neighbors to address inclusiveness of age, ability, income, and etc. Chair Favor and members of council, and I see our council president has joined us. I'm happy to take questions and look forward to working with you and other stakeholders on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and for making those recommendations as we continue to move forward in this process.
You are quite welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Vargas.
Senator, it's not as much a question, just a comment. This point it maybe has already been made, and again, Chair, please pardon my tardiness. That when the conversation about land trust came up at City Hall last year, I just wanted to be noted that it was quickly told to me that this was not a novel idea. That under your leadership as a council member, the work and the foundation have been laid for us to move this conversation forward. So I just wanted to say thank you for giving us this foundation, and hopefully, and we look forward to and would love a copy of your remarks so that we can specifically go through those line items of recommendations that you just went through. So thank you.
Thank you very much, President Hardin, and I appreciate that acknowledgement. But the only reason I shared that is because I really want us to learn from those who have been doing it, and I know your team has been looking at the other land trusts so that we don't make the same mistakes. Starting slow probably makes sense, and you know, there are many communities that have been doing this a very, very long time, and we can learn from what they did right, what they didn't do so right. The only caution I would make, and the gentleman from Homes on the Hill made, is that we need to look at preventative measures, like going into some of those communities who may start being gentrified sooner than what we think, and either buying up the property as the community land trust, or at least working with those property owners to acquire them at the lowest rate possible. So that way, when the house sells, or the apartment complex, if you all move into multifamily, that there is a shared equity that is greater than it would have been if we waited too late. Thank you.
Ms. Tavares, Senator Tavares, and I really do appreciate all the suggestions that you gave us, and I'm sure that Councilwoman or Chairwoman Favors will look at those. I am particularly interested in just thinking about that continuum of where an individual starts in terms of affordable housing, and as they continue to move forward, because the goal is for them to be able to, either through training or other avenues, to be able to move forward in terms of their income, to be able to move from that location to a different form of a still affordable housing. So I appreciate that comment, and also, of course, the tiny homes. We definitely need to have a varied amount of homes to be able to meet the demands of our community at all levels. So I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Totally agree. Thank you.
Director Shoney?
So we've got another, what, 3 hours?
Yeah.
First of all, I do want to thank the state senator for her comments, and we always stand on the shoulders of those who came before us and benefit from the great work that was done by those before us, and I appreciate her work while she was here and her ongoing work at the State House. Yeah, I think she just outlined the scope of our housing study that we're getting ready to kick off with MORPC. Let me say this in general about housing. We have a problem in Columbus. We have neighborhoods that are being quote unquote rediscovered because they offer proximity to jobs and transportation choices that modern consumers want and demand, and so those neighborhoods are back in vogue. We are not, as a community, whether in the city of Columbus or in the region as a whole, building enough housing for the demand that we have. When you have more demand than you do supply, prices rise. And so we need to be working toward, as a Central Ohio community, a housing market where if a family has a full-time job, they can afford housing in the private market. So we need to be looking at what can we do to get there, and in the interim, when we're not there, how do we find ways to use public funds to make it so that everyone has a safe, decent, and sanitary place to live. So that's the challenge that faces us. It's a challenge that faces pretty much every growing city in the country. It is a big, daunting challenge, but we're confident that we've got the right partners to begin to tackle it. It is something that will be needing to be tackled long after my time here, long after whoever takes this chair. It is an ongoing challenge, and it will hopefully, I will say this, hopefully it will always be a challenge, because hopefully we are always a growing, attractive city, and having to manage how we house our people and bring them into the full economic benefits of being in the city. So, as I said, I could go on for about another 3 hours, but I think the state senator outlined a lot of great issues for us.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, any final comments? Ms. Kingsborough? I'd like to officially acknowledge our president, President Hardin, for joining us. And the director of COSIC is also here, Mr. Curtis. Would you like to make any comments, final comments? Absolutely.
Council members, good afternoon. Okay, indeed, it's such a pleasure to be here. Let me start by saying I appreciate your partnership. I appreciate your understanding of the gravity of the issue of affordable housing. And we, as COSIC and the new land trust, look forward to moving things forward with your support and really the support of the community, because that's exactly what it's going to take for us to address this issue into the future. So once again, thank you, and I thank our partners at the county as well. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. President Hardin, any comments you'd like to make?
Just thank you, Chair, and really just a note of appreciation to the administration, to the county for the work that has been done together. This is, affordable housing has become the catchphrase in the city of Columbus, and we have to be careful that we're not just saying things, that we're actually doing and taking credible steps to providing more affordable housing and varied housing for to tackle this issue. And I think this is a good first step, and it's exciting. I'm glad that we are in diverse neighborhoods. I'm glad that we're in King Lincoln. To the senator's point, we need to continue to look further out to see where these trends are going and get ahead of them. But I think this is a really good first step, and I commend COSIC maybe just for the relationship, the close working relationship to get us where we are today. I would also say thank you to OSU, Ohio State University, who stepped up and provided us great feedback to this council over the last several months in this space. But I look forward to 2019 and the leadership of Chair Favor as we deal with this housing issue, and just continue to add to the thing about this is that there's not going to be a one solution. We're going to have several different conversations. We're going to have to stack hands, and I look forward to this council being a part of that conversation. So thank you, Chair.
Ms. Tyson? Thank you all for being here today. Before I was appointed to this position, someone asked me what I would want my time here to be known for. And for me, it's about finding creative solutions to complex problems. And affordable housing is a complex problem. There is not a one-stop shop approach. What will work on the west side, the Hilltop, might not even work in Franklinton, and it probably won't work in Linden. And so this trust is just one tool in our toolbox of affordability that the city can use to move this conversation forward. As you all know, and if you're not aware, there is a bond package proposal that for the very first time includes $50 million that's going to be designated towards the conversation of affordable housing. I think that demonstrates the commitment by the administration, Mayor Ginther, as well as City Council to continue to address the outcry of affordability in Columbus. So I want to applaud the efforts of the administration as well as council to recognize that this is an issue that we have to continue to address. This is my passion, this is my heart here, and so the conversation doesn't stop today. If you have questions, if you have concerns about the trust, our office is available to continue to have those conversations. The director has also flagged that he's available, and I know these folks very well. They will be open to meeting with community groups as this continues to progress along. So I'd like to formally thank you all for being here, Director Shoney, John Turner, and Hope, for spending your afternoon with us, and as well as you all, your stakeholders in this community. And we're not going to be able to address this problem without your constant input. So thank you for being here this afternoon, and have a wonderful evening.